The cold wind sliced across his face as the helicopter roared over the jagged Afghan mountains. Captain Alexei Morozov sat by the open door, gripping the safety strap, eyes locked on the horizon, where the desert kissed the sky. He wasn't just a soldier. He was a father, a widower, and a man who had lost everything except faith. His son, Sasha, 10 years old, waited for him back home in a small town near Tver. After his wife died in the line of duty, Alexei had sworn one thing. "I'll come back, no matter what," for him. But as the helicopter shook and the engine howled against the wind, an unease crept into his chest. Something wasn't right. "Morozov!" shouted Sergeant Kramer, the American who served in their joint unit. "The commander wants a word." Alexei rose, squeezing between men packed tightly inside, until he reached Colonel Richards, the mission commander, a man whose eyes were like cold glass, unreadable, merciless. "Captain," Richards said flatly, "we've got new orders. You're going first." Alexei frowned. "First? We're on recon. There's no drop zone yet." Richards didn't answer. Instead, he gave a subtle nod to Kramer and two others. Before Alexei could react, they lunged. Hands grabbed his arms. A fist slammed into his gut. Another blow cracked against his jaw. "What the hell?" he gasped. Richard's voice was calm, almost bored. "Orders from above. You know too much." Alexei's eyes widened. "Too much? About what?" And then the side door of the helicopter slid open. The wind howled, deafening, and the three men shoved him toward the edge. Wait, but it was too late. The world exploded into silence. He fell, spinning. The sky above him, the earth racing up below. The roar of the helicopter faded into nothing but the rush of air and the pounding of his own heartbeat. He could feel death closing in, sharp, inevitable. Is this it? After everything? Then, something changed. A flash of light, a shimmer of water below. A split second before impact, he twisted his body, braced himself, and hit not rock, but river. The shock of freezing water stole his breath, but he was alive. He kicked to the surface, gasping, fighting the current until his fingers clawed against wet stones. He crawled onto the riverbank, trembling, coughing, but whole. He looked up at the sky, at the shrinking dot of the helicopter vanishing into clouds. "I'm alive," he whispered. Not a single bone broken. Only bruises, soaked fatigue, and disbelief. For 3 days, Alexei wandered through the mountains. No food, no communication, only the will to survive. He finally stumbled into a small Afghan village. The locals, poor shepherds, took him in, fed him bread and tea. One old man, speaking broken Russian, looked at him with wide eyes. "You fall from sky," he said. "Then you live. Allah protect you." Alexei smiled weakly. Maybe someone up there wasn't done with me yet. When he finally made it back to the base, jaws dropped. Morozov. They couldn't believe it. Everyone thought he'd died, but neither Richards nor Kramer were there. They had vanished. Hours later, the report came in. Their helicopter crashed on return flight. No survivors. Months passed. Alexei left the service and returned home. His son was waiting at the train station, eyes full of tears. "Dad." Sasha ran to him, hugging him so tightly he could barely breathe. "You smell like the sky," the boy said. "Maybe because I just fell from it," Alexei whispered. Life slowly rebuilt itself. Alexei got a job as a mountain rescue specialist, saving people who got lost or trapped, just as he once had been. But peace never lasted long. One rainy evening, a knock came on his door. A man in a dark coat stood outside, holding a government ID. "Captain Morozov, I'm from the Ministry of Defense. We need to talk." Over the next hour, Alexei learned the truth. Colonel Richards had been running an illegal arms trade. Alexei had stumbled onto classified evidence of it, and they'd tried to silence him. But now, the ministry needed his testimony. "Do you understand, Captain," the officer said, "that your survival changed the course of this investigation?" Alexei smiled bitterly. "I suppose the river had its reasons." At the tribunal, Alexei told everything. Every name, every order, every detail. His words dismantled the entire network. Justice was served. The soldiers who'd been wronged were honored, their names cleared. When it was over, a journalist asked him, "How did you survive a fall from that height?" Alexei simply said, Sometimes fate decides who falls, and who stands back up. A year later, he returned to the same river, now calm, shining under the sun. Sasha was with him, holding his hand. "This is where it happened?" the boy asked. "Yes." "Were you scared?" Alexei thought for a moment. "I was. But fear is just the shadow before courage." Sasha looked at the flowing water. "Mom would be proud of you." Alexei's throat tightened. He put a hand on his son's shoulder. "I hope so." A helicopter passed overhead, its blades thundering like a ghost from the past. This time, Alexei didn't flinch. He just looked up, and smiled. Years went by. He became a legend among the rescue teams, the man who fell from the sky and walked away unharmed. But he never bragged. When people asked, he always gave the same answer. "I survived because I wasn't ready to die. My son still needed me." One winter morning, a call came in. A young hiker was missing in the mountains. The storm was brutal, visibility near zero. "Captain, we should turn back," one rescuer said. Alexei shook his head. "Someone's out there, alone, like I was once." They pressed on through the blizzard. After hours of searching, Alexei spotted movement between two cliffs, a body half buried in snow. He crawled down, checked the pulse, alive. When the boy regained consciousness at the campfire that night, he whispered, "You saved me." Alexei smiled. "No, I just paid back a debt. Someone once saved me, too." That night, he sat alone by the fire, holding a small army dog tag, scratched, worn, but still legible. Alexei Morozov. Underneath, carved by hand. "Fall 100 times, stand 101. He closed his hand around it and looked up at the stars. "Thank you," he whispered, "for that fall. It was the beginning of my life." One spring morning, an envelope arrived. Official government seal. Inside, a medal and a letter from the general. "Greater than Captain Morozov. Fate tests the strong. You proved that rank doesn't define a man, how he rises after the fall does." He placed the letter next to two photos on his desk, one of Sasha, now grown, and one of his late wife. For the first time in years, his heart felt completely still. Peaceful. Time passed. Sasha followed in his father's footsteps. He joined the Cadet Academy, then the Air Corps. On the day of his first solo flight, Alexei stood at the airfield, watching the helicopter rise into the blue. When the craft touched down, Sasha jumped out, beaming. "How'd I do, Dad?" Alexei grinned. "Perfect. Just remember, son, helicopters don't kill. Fear does." They laughed, standing under the same sky that once tried to take Alexei's life. People still tell his story. They call him the man they threw from a helicopter who stood up without a scratch. But Alexei always corrected them. "No miracle saved me," he'd say. Faith did. Faith in his son. Faith in life. Faith that every fall, no matter how deep, is just the beginning of another flight.